Hi everyone, lovely to see you. My name is Dr. David Patton. I'm from the University of Derby, just round the corner on Friargate Square on Agard Street. And it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite to come and speak with you guys today. Now, I'm here kind of in a professional role, but actually I'm also here because I'm from the northeast of England originally, growing up on a council estate in the 1980s in Middlesbrough, which is officially the worst place to live in England for all of the wrong metrics, for kind of educational attainment, morbidity rates, death rates, you name it, violence, crime, it's got the worst, and repeatedly so. So I grew up there during a time of really economic decline and know firsthand how whole communities and generation after generation can be impacted by kind of crime and addiction. And so I have family members and friends who were involved in addiction, and some of whom are in recovery and some of whom unfortunately have died. And that's the reality. And so I'm here professionally and personally, if I'm being really honest. So I'm going to share with you some of the research evidence that I've kind of gathered over the years, and also sharing a little bit about the partnership that I have with Jericho House and a very recent project that we've been involved in together. So if you just move to the next slide. What you so often hear around drug addiction recovery is that people like them with these life experiences. So from the hundreds upon hundreds of interviews that I've done with people who've been in addiction, what you typically hear is the box on the left-hand side in the red. So you hear about the unresolved trauma, the things that happen often in childhood that completely should never have happened to anybody. Those abhorrent traumatic events of life that completely shifted the trajectory of the rest of your life, that's still dealing with to the present day. And someone once said during an interview, actually, I was in a mutual aid group, and somebody said to me for the first time, why did you choose to use the drugs? And he had a flashback to some childhood trauma, and for him that was the first time he realized that he wasn't a dirty scumbag who wanted to choose addiction and choose the drug use, that actually he chose the drugs to numb the pain of those horrific events. And you also hear about kind of people struggling therefore with low self-esteem, low confidence, mental health issues, and how again those factors combine to influence life choices. That when you don't have the best levels of self-esteem, you don't tend to make kind of set goals and have ambition. A lot of people I've interviewed were hopeless, felt so hopeless, they didn't care whether they lived or died. And that often leads then to kind of forming relationships with people, friendships, if I dare say that, or romantic partnerships with people, especially for the women in addiction, where their partners would beat them to a pulp, would maybe even kind of prostitute them out for money. And their friendships were really revolved around substance use and scoring together and committing crimes together. So it's like this vicious circle of issues that kind of come about. And then you've also got kind of like unemployment or working in really crappy jobs, kind of living this double life in quite dire life circumstances. So that tends to be the traditional story that I hear when I conduct these interviews. And also when speaking with, just stay on the other one. When speaking with people in early addiction recovery, the only thing they tend to mention as to what was helpful, what was positive in that early phase was what's in the green box, which was about the power of mutual age, lived experience, recovery support groups. But the thing that hacks me off about all of this is that it gets reduced to, oh, that's Billy's story, isn't that sad what happened to Billy? Or Zadia, or Sally, or Sharon. And it somehow becomes about people like them with those specific experiences. Yeah, next slide. But actually, I was doing this project, and during the conversation, a guy who was kind of 20 years in recovery kind of said this quote. And he said, people self-medicate due to what's going on in society, but then people can start to make informed decisions about how they use the tools of recovery as antidotes to that or as treatments to that. And that blew my boxes, because what I believe and what I've shown in my published work is that actually your individual story tells a bigger story. And the bigger story is the society and the way in which our society in white Western countries, it's let you down. Because it's predicated, now you have to bear with me, I'm a social scientist, but it's built upon that fragile white man many years ago who colonized most of the rest of the world. Yeah? And he said, in order to live in my society, you've got to look like me, think like me, and do as I do. And you've got to kind of sell your family and all your relationships through capitalism to pursue a job and the next promotion. And he said that we, the males, are better than you as females. And we as white people are better than you as black, brown, yellow, and so forth people. That was the model that's been given. And then we wonder why we're kind of spiraling with the highest levels of mental health issues, suicide, self-harm rates, addiction levels, but we're heralded as being one of the most advanced, richest countries in the world. And a lot of people are shamed during their addiction to think that you're dirty. So what you often hear is, hi, I'm David and I'm 20 years clean. Well, I'm here to say you weren't dirty in the first place. Unfortunately, society and the structures of our society have let you down, and they put you in conditions that meant that the likelihood of you making those positive choices were never going to happen. Next slide. And so in the same week I heard that guy in that meeting talk about how society causes the damage and that recovery gives you these antidotes to it. I heard this quote from Graham, and it said that societies eventually develop antibodies to addictive new things. And that's what I believe that the culture of recovery, and through organizations such as Jericho and other LEROs, Back In, Recovery Connections, The Well, there are scores across the nation. They do things differently. And what they create is antibodies to this kind of colonial capitalist structure in society. So often what you see, it makes me laugh this time of year, on a sunny day, I'll be there in my garden mowing the lawn on the one sunny day of the year. But around the same time, there'll be all the neighbours in the row with their own lawnmowers, and we're all going backwards and forwards together with our lawnmowers. Why do we need 20-odd lawnmowers on our street? Why can't we share? Why can't we say, hey, buddy, can I borrow your lawnmower? I don't have one. But we've lost that sense of asking for help in society. We've all got to be self-sufficient. We've all got to be all right, Jack. And it's this priority of material possessions. We've all got to have the stuff. But actually, it's not beneficial for us. And I've lived on my street in nice white suburbia for coming up 15 years. And the depth of the conversation goes something like this. Oh, hi, how are you doing? And then I'll say, yeah, I'm good, thanks, David. How are you? I'll go, yeah, all right, thanks. Just a bit busy with work and, with the 3 kids just dashing off somewhere. How's your kids? Oh, yeah, they're doing really well. They've just passed their exams. Yeah, they're just about to get a good job doing whatever. And then we both kind of hurriedly get into our cars and drive off to kind of work. And that's a relationship of 15 or so years living on the street. That's the level of vulnerability. And again, we've got to ask ourselves, when you come into the recovery community, you don't have conversations like that, do you? Because you know that compromises your well-being. You bring your whole self into those conversations and into those interactions. And so if you've had a great day, you're going to share that. And if you've had a crap day or an in-between day, you're also going to share that. And so often in our workplaces, on and on it goes. Hey David, how's your project going? Yeah, fine, thanks. How's yours? Yeah, really great, thanks. We're on target. Everything's gone really well. Yeah, we've even we're ahead of where we thought we'd be, and there's been no problems at all. And then I'm left there thinking, oh right, so it's just me and my project that's going down the Swanee. It's just me and my team that have got a few interpersonal issues then, is it? And so then I put on the armor, and I put on this smile, and I pretend like everything's okay all of the time, even though I know I'm lying, because no matter how good your life is, nothing's okay all of the time. And so over time, the stress that places on, and I'm saying me, is too much to bear. Maintaining this fake self is too much to bear, and you guys know that. And that's why research shows that people in recovery, statistically, have got higher levels of well-being and quality of life as compared to the general population. Because you guys live well. And as far as I'm concerned, you're the leaders of our communities. So you'll often hear concerned neighbours, there's a rehab centre or a recovery organisation on our street or in our neighbourhood. Watch your purse, watch your bag. But again, research shows that you guys do more volunteering and give more back to the community than white rich people like me and other local residents in the neighbourhoods. You give more voluntary hours back to the community. But some people go, oh, I'm making amends for all the time that I stole and all of that stuff. I don't buy that narrative, because you give more than voluntary hours. The way you live your life is showing us a different way as to how to live that's healthy, because the way in which we're living right now is not healthy. Next slide. So I realized at that point from that meeting with that guy who first said that quote, that the direction of my research looking at individuals was wrong. That there's this focus on responsibilizing individuals, dissecting what happened to you and at what age did those things happen. And if I don't have that same life experience as you, then I'm going to be okay and really sorry about your story. And so what I've realized is that when you're telling your story, what you're telling is a bigger story of how you've unplugged from on the left-hand side, almost one power circuit, yeah? You were involved in a dysfunctional, damaging society, and the pathways of happiness and the pathways of success that it said you should follow didn't work. And now you're in recovery, you've unplugged your circuits and you've replugged into the right-hand side, this alternative way of being and living and doing. So the practices that you have in your recovery, meditation, being in nature, bringing your whole self into a situation, being authentic, asking for help, having a practice of regularly checking in with support groups and other trusted people, having accountability when you're having a wobble. And so many, fitness and exercise and nutrition and all this other stuff that you guys do and just take for granted. You've plugged into a new way of life, and it's a bigger picture. Next slide. So we need this different lens, and we need to stop peddling individuals out on a stage and saying that addiction is an individual problem. That's not to diminish the importance of those things that have happened to you. I'm not saying that, but I'm here to take away the individual shame. Next slide. So as my research has mapped out the culture of recovery, and I've worked with and analysed hundreds of transcripts, and we've done lots of observation work of going to different recovery communities and observing the interactions and what you guys do. And what we've found is that there's a culture predicated on these kind of elements. So on connection and community, because you guys know when you're in the midst of addiction, you are so isolated and alone. So now you've got to be connected to yourself, hence your kind of like journaling, your meditation, all of that stuff, your time in nature, time with self, connecting to self, that's fundamental. but also connection to each other in a supported community. And also it's about collaboration. So you're not in competition with other people, in the same way as I was talking about in the workplace. You know that you've got to work with each other and you're all on a shared sense of mission together. And a lot of people in their recovery journey, actually what they find is a sense of meaning and purpose. That they're no longer just kind of seeking the better salary or the bigger house and the square footage or to live in a certain postcode. Not to say that you won't still want those things, they're not bad in and of themselves, but you live life on a deeper level now. You have meaning and fulfillment in your life. But also, you're on a journey of healing. You deal with your stuff. A lot of people in mainstream society, we walk around with our baggage and it kind of wears us down. And we kind of like try and cover over it by buying more things or buying our kids more things, and so on it goes. So we mask over our own traumas. And it's also about restoration and reconciliation. That actually, even though relationships with family and stuff may have been difficult, and with children or whatever, you may have lost custody, that those things are often regained in recovery. So it's the complete opposite as to the mainstream society. Next slide. So one of my kind of missions in my work is to how I can elevate the lived experience knowledge, because it always makes me chuckle. I'm someone who's never used an illegal drug. I've not been addicted to illegal drugs. But because I've got a PhD in drugs, I'm a criminologist, I'm seen as the expert. And I think that's wrong. So I look to you guys as the experts, and all of the knowledge that I've created in academic journals and books and so on and so forth are a result of speaking with people in recovery. And I think it's wrong that I get a promotion by sharing that knowledge. That's just ethically and morally wrong. So I don't do it. So all of the projects I kind of lead are about you guys with your names on it, your faces on it. And so there's one project that is ongoing at the moment that we've just kind of worked with Jericho House on, which is called Photo Voice. And basically, if you go to the next slide, we started off with a number of locations across England, and we went to recovery communities, and we kind of said to them, because the traditional approach in research is, will you fill out my survey, or can we do an interview? But the problem with that is, first of all, you've got this middle-aged white guy trying to think, well, what questions are relevant? And if I've not used drugs and not been in addiction, how do I know what to ask? And the very first study I was involved in, I was worked for Cambridge University, and we asked questions like this. We worked in police stations for a month at a time. It was a big multi-million-pound Home Office study. And we said to them, so what drugs have you used? And how much drugs did you use? And how many crimes did you commit in an average week? How much money would you make? And have you got a gun? Have you used a knife? Have you ever sold yourself in exchange for money and sex? So if you ask questions like that, what story can I tell about those people? Negative one, yeah? Because all I've asked them is negative questions. And that's part of the problem, that the story that has been told about people who've been in addiction focuses on your drug use and focuses on all of the negative things. So with this project that we've been involved in, the question is, what has worked in your recovery? And rather than it being a survey, you guys in recovery get trained up, use a camera, and you take photographs of what's worked in your recovery. So now you're the researcher, not me. You guys create the data set, not me. And you guys disseminate it. So I'm just going to share with you, if you go to the next slide, just 3 quick entries from Jericho House that I've just received in the last week. So this was one of the entries, and when I was at Jericho House about a month ago, 6 weeks, something like that, this was a picture that was on their wall, and the the guy kind of started looking at it, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'm looking at that picture, he said, it reminds me of a happy time when we went on holiday together. He said, those are my recovery family. And you could see, he felt quite emotional, a sense of pride that those were his people. He said, but I'm also looking at that. He said, it's community and it's unity. He said, and there's something about the shape that we're sat in. He said, there's something about sitting in a circle. He said, we don't often sit in a circle much these days, do we? We tend to sit in straight lines like we do today, which means you can't really talk and connect with each other. But in a circle, he said, you can connect. And for him, what he's sharing through this photograph is actually connection, communication, and unity. That's the power of what works in recovery. Next picture. This guy shared this photo and talking about how in his recovery journey, recovery has opened up new pathways for him. And he said, now my life is like a summer's day. And I love that kind of lovely metaphor. And that's backed up by research evidence. So if you can get somebody to be in recovery for 5 years plus, so you've got early recovery, which is the first year, sustained recovery, which is years 1 to 4, and stable, which is 5 years plus. If you can get someone to that 5-year point, it's really significant. Because in the first year of recovery, the chance of returning to drug use is really high, between kind of 50 and 75%. Why? Because like that first slide with all of the factors in the red box, all of that stuff is still live and going on. Whereas when you get to kind of 5 years plus stable recovery, the chance of relapse and returning to drug use goes down to 15%, 15, which is the same chance of onset of addiction that I've got and the rest of the local community who've never used a drug, for those that haven't, the same chance that we've got of starting an addiction recovery pathway. So it's kind of this power of recovery that it's regenerative. It restores your life to levels of quality of life and well-being that the rest of the community share, which is amazing. So life being like a summer's day is a real testimony that we hear time and time again. From the hundreds of interviews that I've done, I always hear this phrase, my life now is way better than the life I had, not just before not just when I was using drugs, but the life I had before I even started using them. And I'm doing things now that I never dreamed would be possible. My life is way beyond that which I could have imagined it would be like. And that's the power of recovery. And that's the power of this photograph as evidence. Next photo. And this photo was really powerful for me because yesterday was Father's Day. And for me, Father's Day is a struggle. Because although my dad wasn't in addiction, he didn't have the capacity to be a father. And so it's always a tough day. But the power of this guy's story here shared how for him, in addiction, he wasn't there to be able to be a father to his daughter. And during addiction, he kind of lost contact with his daughter. But because of the power of recovery, not only has he regained kind of connection and kind of custody and access with his daughter, but that was her first day of going to school. And he was there and taking her to her first day of school. And he said, now is my time to be a father. And that's powerful. Because that's the power of recovery, that you make amends, you do that atonement, actually you heal the wrongs, and you take responsibility. And I just thought that, with it being Father's Day yesterday, that was a really powerful kind of submission point. So I'm really grateful to everyone who submitted. And if you want to check out more submissions, you can go to pathways2recovery.co.uk. So pathways, plural, to recovery.co.uk. And you can look at the different kind of communities submissions there. Next slide. So I'm just going to read this quote from Bruce Alexander. It's quite a long one. It says, society will change at a gallop when its worldview changes, but its worldview will not change until an alternative philosophy appears. together with images, ceremonies, music, and metaphysics that can give it life in human hearts and minds. The talented people who can produce them intuitively will materialize, as others have done in previous eras of despair and confusion. We can only hope that they will appear sooner rather than later, and that they are able to recognize them when they do. And so this guy's talking about kind of this longing for kind of people to come and to kind of show the way. Well, I'm here today to say I see you and I hear you. For every person in this room who's been in addiction and is now in recovery, I see you and I hear you. And I'm so grateful for your power and your strength and your resilience that you're now doing things differently. And I'm really grateful to you for showing not only everybody in this room, but my hope is that beyond this room, that you go out and carry the message as you live your life. You see, a lot of it, the knowledge transfer in white Western societies will do a PowerPoint like this. That's not how you share knowledge. You share knowledge through your lived experience. It's about the way you live your life. Why? Because people are watching. People are looking. And they may not comment on it, not at first, but they're watching you. And so the way you're living your life is a bold, radical example to a lot of people in society right now who are struggling. They don't have to be in addiction to be struggling. And so thank you for showing a different way of how to live. Next slide. And so something that I'm doing in acknowledgement of the power of the wisdom that's in this room, if we were to add up the years of recovery in this room, it's probably several centuries worth of knowledge and wisdom. And what I know is that the medical model and the treatment system are absolutely needed to help people overcome addiction issues. But if that's all that's on offer, then I think that we've missed it. So the research is very clear that people in recovery will try lots of different options to get from addiction to where they are today. The majority of people do not recover in a clinic. Research is very clear on that. The majority of people recover in the community and through lived experience recovery organizations. That's where the magic happens. And for me, LEROs, as I call them, lived experience recovery organizations, are the places of transformation and healing and power that ripples outwards into our society, into our streets, into our neighborhoods, into our communities. And so I've set up new central media to tell this new story. So every book, every publication doesn't have my name on it, it has your names on it. So at the moment we've commissioned kind of 4 books. And so there's a LEROs book, so I'm interviewing CEOs of LEROs to tell their story, because the way in which they run those organizations and build community is different. You don't get that in most workplaces. We're told to have boundaries and 9 to 5 and, we create teams. Whereas in LEROs, what I hear is that we're family and we'll do anything for each other. And on most days in your organizations and in your communities, you're willing to ask for help, but most days you don't even need to ask for it because your people know you so well, they've got your back before you even start slipping. And that's the difference, and that's the story I want to tell through New Central Media. So I'm going to end on that note, and if anyone wants to get involved in any of the books, so there's a LEROs book that we're doing a book on Black and Asian experiences, because we know that that's different to white people in the room who've recovered through cultural and spiritual differences and a whole host of other factors. We're doing a women's recovery book, because the way men recover is different to women. And we're also doing a prison recovery book. So what role can prison play, positive or negative or otherwise? So we've got a range of kind of people who are national leaders in this area. So we've got Professor Ed Day, the National Recovery Champion, who's a co-editor on the LEROs book. We've got Sohan Sahota, who's an editor on the Black and Asian book. And we're really kind of looking forward to kind of producing this new knowledge base that's telling a different story. And I thank you so much for helping me create it. Thank you.